Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out. My name's Kaplan Hasanoglu. I'm running for Hopedale Board of Selectmen, as you know, or Select Board, as it is now called. And I just wanted to begin by saying a little bit about myself. I know plenty of folks are aware of who I am from the last campaign. And then I'm going to say a little bit about why I'm running. And then after that, I'd be interested to take your questions. You can sort of ask me anything, ask me about my candidacy to learn more about me, and I'll sort of leave it as a free discussion from there. So as I said, my name is Kaplan Hasanoglu. I'm a philosophy professor. I teach in the Boston area. My wife and I, Sarah, and my 13-month-old Devrim, we moved to Hopedale in May of 2020. And I have a history with local government and grassroots organizing. I sort of had my political awakening in 2015, and I started a group in Millis when I lived there. And it was a group designed to promote active, informed citizenship. And we did things like hold candidate forums. We organized them. We organized informational meetings so folks could learn about specific issues that they cared about. I organized marches. We did other debates. We had a preparatory meeting for town meeting. I kind of wanted, the idea that I had with the group was to promote a town meeting form of government and to promote direct democracy. And that was in 2015. And there was much success with that. And at the same time of doing that, I joined the Council on Aging in Millis. And so I had a lot of exposure to local government, met a lot of great people, and sort of caught the bug of public service. And we eventually had to leave Millis, and I'll spare you the details, but we moved to Hopedale. And, you know, I was just going about my business, so to speak. And what happened was I learned from the Hopedale Bulletin Board, Heather. So I guess this is your fault, Heather. I learned from the Hopedale Bulletin Board that at that time, no one had pulled papers for the special election in, this was, you know, in, let's see, October. And so I pulled papers and got my signatures in. And when I went in to pull my papers, I had heard only that someone else had pulled them at that time. So I knew that I was, you know, going to have another person potentially that I was going to run against, but I thought, you know, why not go for it? And then sort of interestingly, I had my first meeting with the folks of Hopedale at the special town meeting with respect to the 364 West Street property in October. And I was handing out flyers, and I handed out a flyer to Mike Collins, and I said, hey, I'm Kaplan, I'm running for selectman. And he goes, so am I. And I did not know that. That was when I met Mike and I met Nancy, and they were very gracious, and they've always been very gracious. And I kind of threw myself into this because I thought it would be a unique opportunity. And I have the history of grassroots organizing and public life, and I really enjoy it. And then from there, I sort of threw myself into a campaign, and it was a grassroots campaign. And this is what I do, you know, this is what I like doing. And it was in the middle of the pandemic, so it got a little, you know, a little hairy at some times, but I did a door knocking campaign. I did canvassing. I connected in some way, shape, or form with over 500 voters. I probably spoke to well over 100 people. I learned, you know, in a face-to-face manner, you know, at a safe distance, what folks in town cared about, what they stood for, what they liked about Hopedale, what their concerns were. And I just met a lot of great people. I mean, that's another meeting, some of the stories I could tell you. You'll be surprised what happens when you just knock on someone's door. And so I have some great stories. But through that, I was able to connect with people And in the span of 6 weeks, with a whole bunch of other efforts, I went from, folks not really knowing who I am to pulling 20% of the vote, which, I considered a success. But I, of course, didn't win. And Glenda won, and Mike did well, of course. But what I'm just very stubborn, frankly. And I wasn't gonna stop, and I knew that this election was coming along, and I knew what I wanted to do. And so I immediately after that decided to keep going, and I joined the Master Plan Steering Committee and the Planning Board. And I gained experience that way. And the Master Plan Steering Committee has been a really great experience. It shows that we are in a very pivotal time right now for Hopedale. And the Planning Board has also been very interesting, learning about how the government runs here, learning what some of the bigger issues are in town, learning just the sort of ins and outs of those kinds of meetings and open meetings, and meeting a lot of people. And I had always planned to run again, and I had assumed that I was running against Glenda, of course. And that was because, like I said, I'm pretty stubborn, and I wanted to win. I have a lot of people who also encouraged me to win. I had a lot of positive energy behind my initial campaign, and I had my name out there, so I went for it. And then at the time of handing in my signatures, I assumed that I was going to be running against her. And then only later did I learn that she had resigned. And then, of course, she came back in. And so, here I am. I haven't had as much of a time to do the canvassing, but I'm trying to build off of my campaign. I think folks want to know what I'm about. I'm about direct democracy. I'm about town meeting. I'm about forming a partnership between the people of Hopedale and the government. I come from a relatively neutral perspective, given the fact that I'm a newcomer in town, but I'm very committed. I love to learn. I'm a philosophy professor, so I love to learn. And I love to interact with people. And if folks gave me a chance, I would give this my all. The only other thing I'll say is that at the same time that I started my campaign, my most recent campaign, I sort of did a parallel campaign called Step Up for Hopedale 2021, where I put my grassroots organizing experience to work. Because when I had an original meeting, and you can see this is on public record, I had a meet and greet. And Sam Hockenberry, who was a very important member in town, served the chairman of the finance committee. He said, well, you have all these ideas, but they need participation. We need people to fill spots. And I told him then, I was like, look, you can do that. You can get people to fill the spots. You just have to be persistent and just not give up and literally knock on their doors. And I said, I'll do that, Sam. I'll knock on people's doors and ask them. And it's a numbers game. And what I did is I started this campaign, and this was only 5 weeks ago, and I got a handful of committed people. And that's all you need, folks, is a handful of committed people to commit to filling these spots in town. And we've only been working for 5 weeks, and we've got 8 people to fill the spots. Now we have a lot more to fill. We literally have, I think, around 13 more to fill. Okay, but we have people to fill the planning board. We have people on an open space planning committee, which is going to be crucial for implementing the master plan. We have folks who are interested in the economic development committee. And there's more to happen. There's more spots that are going to be filled, but I'm not done, and I'm not going to stop until we fill those positions. And I know that we can do it because people have already stepped up. Even recently, just the latest post I gave today, I learned that somebody else is interested in a write-in campaign for housing authority. So that's how it works. You just don't give up, you don't go away, and you keep trying, and you get stuff done. And that's how I'll operate, and I'll operate with the grassroots level, and I'll operate in a constructive way. But that's what I'm about, and I think you can kind of see it in action. And I just want to be clear that the effort to fill those spots was not just me. It was a lot of people, okay? And you need good people. And I had a lot of help. But that sort of shows my approach, and that's the kind of thing I would continue to do if elected. So, I probably went on too long there. I don't know. I like to talk, so hopefully that gives a little bit about my energy and what I'm about. This was meant to be a sort of Q&A, and I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, but it is like when I teach a Zoom class, and I won't be afraid to call people out. Heather, Jimmy, if I have to, I will. But and Mike and other folks, I'd really be interested to take your questions. You can just chime in. You can throw it in the chat. You can raise your hand. I know all the Zoom methods, but anything you'd like to know about me to sort of hear more about my candidacy and what I'm about, I'd be happy to answer questions. Yeah, Michael.
Hey, you talked about doing the canvassing, and you talked to like 100 people you got to know. I'd be curious to know, because you probably have a good handle on this. Like, for most of us in the town, we talk to the few people we know, and we read the Facebook bulletin board. What surprised you when you talked to that many people about the difference between what your perception was maybe from Facebook about the priorities of the town folks, as opposed to when you talk to a lot of people?
There's one thing that sort of speaks towards an adjacent part of your question is this. I was very surprised by how much people knew about what was going on, even when they weren't involved in Facebook, I should say. So that sort of answers your question a little bit. They would say, I'd be like, I'd have a sort of set of questions I would ask them, and I would say, well, do you follow local issues in towns? And people would be like, oh, no, not really. And then I give a follow-up question, and people would indicate to me just how connected they are with issues. And people cared about the Draper building and what was happening there. That was partly a function of where I canvassed. I canvassed a lot on Freedom Street, for example, and Hopedale Street. And so people cared about what was going on there, and they knew about that. People expressed a lot of frustration about communication in town. There was some frustration about communication in town. A lot of folks were worried about their taxes being raised. Okay, so as far as like differences that I got from that and the Hopedale bulletin board, I'm not sure. I'm not very checking the Hopedale bulletin board a lot either. So maybe that's sort of one way in which I can't speak too intelligently about your question. But as far as my impressions about what I got from canvassing, those were it. It was that people were, I thought, surprisingly more aware of things than you might think, and very much invested in what's going on. So I don't know if that answers your question. If you want to follow up.
Yeah, no, that did. I think that I hear a lot about taxes, right? Or concerns about the overrides, concerns about the Draper Mill because of people's perception that's pivotal to the economic development of the town because it's such a large parcel of commercial space, those kinds of things. A lot about about potential pot shops, a lot about cost of schools, cost of fire department, cost of the police department.
Yeah. The Blackstone Valley School, right there, that was an issue. Open space, concern for open space was a common concern that folks would voice. I wanted to sort of do what I can to let people know that I could remain connected with them, and like just meeting them face to face meant a lot to people, and asking for their vote meant a lot to people. And I found that was people responded well to that. But yes, a lot of the same concerns that you mentioned. Any other questions, folks?
No, I was thinking about, a few of the town meetings in the past couple of years where people get up and they talk about how we have this spending problem and that's why we need overrides and such. and obviously there's not always going to be that appetite to, yeah, let's raise our taxes. That's great. But I guess I'm just trying to think like how, I don't think the town necessarily has a spending problem. In fact, like our salaries in town are less, like the teachers are about 10-15% less. The police department's about 30% less than local areas, and they're trying to correct that now. But like, how do we get people to understand, that it's, I guess it's a messaging thing, right? Like it's not, I don't want to, I don't know. This is not a very well articulated question. I'm sorry, Kaplan.
No,
It's
I
just sort
mean,
of like, but that's sort of like the feeling like, oh, well, no one wants to pay taxes. Yeah, but you get so much out of it.
right. No, I mean, I think there are legitimate concerns about revenue, which is the sort of other side of the ledger there, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Right. And so, and it is true, we need a sort of long-term strategy in place for that, right? For creative ways to get revenue. Now, a lot has happened, as folks know, that is encouraging in that respect with, the pot shops opening up, for example, right? And I'm going to sort of mention the master plan here, okay? And the master plan being a wide-ranging effort, included in which is economic development. And so we need a long-term strategy like the master plan for creative ways to bring new sources of revenue here. And I don't want to, there's no way of predicting how exactly that's going to go, right? You can make promises and it's not going to necessarily happen because you don't know the future. But I think one sort of concern that I've noticed is that we've had some issues with implementation of past plans. Now, this is not to point fingers at all. I've only met very great people who work in town government. A lot of it can have to do with high rates of turnover, for example. But there is if you have a plan that goes forward and you don't sort of remain accountable to implementing it, then that can be an issue, right? So one of the ideas that I have that is not going to be me over promising anything is that once we get this master plan going, right, let's make sure that we are very concrete about how we're going to implement it. And it is kind of interesting because the master plan itself can be sort of reflexive in that way, by that I mean part of the master plan can be to have a plan about how to implement the master plan. And I think that's an important thing to have, and it's going to be part of it, right? And so as far as my ideas about how to bring revenue to town, I mean, there's all sorts of things that folks already know about ways to sort of attract businesses. I think we should get folks on the Economic Development Committee. I think we should work closely with the Milford Area Chamber of Commerce. I think we should, communicate a clear vision for the downtown area and the Draper area. I know that it's a private piece of property, but we can do our job to communicate a clear vision for what we want there, and work with Mr. Schwachman, who has been nice enough. He's on the master plan steering committee. Okay. And then aside from that, I don't have a magic bullet for economic development, but what I can say is that we can work hard to make sure that we implement whatever plan we put in place. So I don't know, Heather, if that helps address what you're saying. I always like to answer the question.
Yeah, no, I mean, we definitely need different sources of revenue just besides, us homeowners and such. Although I'm certainly happy to pay my share, that's fine. But I guess I'm also sort of thinking about, the value of the services that people are getting in return. And I think a lot of folks forget about that when, the talk comes to, oh, well, we're going to have to raise taxes again. and I'm hopeful that with the diversified set of revenue that will be less of an issue. But also, I mean, our town workers are rock stars, and they should be applauded for that instead of, that's all. That's more of a feelings question, I suppose, than anything else.
Well, no, I think there's part of, like, as far as ideas that can help with that, there's ways of communicating. That's partly a communication issue, right? If people if maybe folks are not aware of the value that they're getting, right, as much as they should be, right? And there's ways of communicating that value that could possibly be improved. Again, it's not to point fingers, it's to say that maybe we could do more. I feel like you can always do more to communicate things properly. And so I don't think I'm going to make everybody happy who raises their taxes, but there is this idea of letting people know how it's being spent, and maybe we could do that a little bit better, which could alleviate some of the stuff you're talking about, Heather. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's cool.
Plus, if I could chime in, the other piece of information that could be communicated better would be where, I think it's been done in the past, but you can never do it too much, which is where do we stand in relation to other communities? Because in the absence of that, everybody just draw from their own experience, which is, well, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, I paid a lot less. Now I'm paying a lot more. They have to understand how that fits into where do we stack up against other similar towns in Massachusetts? Are we more expensive, less expensive? That's a huge piece of the puzzle. Because if we're not more expensive, then it's just a perception problem.
Yes. And, it's sort of, because I'm trying to do things that, will not be, again, a kind of silver bullet, but ideas, long-term ideas that can help, lessen the issue. And yeah, I mean, this Hopedale is a very unique community, right? And there's a sense that you can do things that help foster a sense of community, right? And like Heather, like you said, Heather, you don't mind spending your money, right? You there, Heather? Heather, I just called on you. Oh, Heather.
Yeah, I'm here. No.
Yeah.
Trying to get the mute button to appear so I can press it.
I love. Can we all just agree that we cannot wait to have face-to-face meetings? Yeah.
Face-to-face, definitely.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah. So I think that
Yeah.
the tax revenue thing, if you get people to feel connected with their community, right, then they'll see that putting that tax dollars to work helping their fellow residents of Hopedale, right, then it won't be such a feeling of a burden or anything like that. And I do think it's sort of abstract, but I do think you can do things that help change the culture. I think it's difficult, but I think it's possible. And I think just doing things that help build this community and that sense of community, and there's all sorts of things you can do there as well, right, could help alleviate some of the negative feelings you're talking about, Heather.
Right. And, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine from Mendon, and they're putting through or they're working on a tax break for seniors, which, I was saying, I don't know that we're in a position to do that yet, but I think that would be something worthwhile to consider once we do diversify that tax revenue a bit more, so that seniors aren't priced out of town.
Absolutely.
Because that's a problem, and I
definitely.
absolutely feel for that for people who are on fixed incomes. And I'm not just like, hey, let's have lots of taxes. That's great. There's my dog again. But
no, I hear you.
But yeah, I'm just sort of like, but that would also lend to that community aspect, that we are taking care of our people, the ones who need it the most. If we can at some point give them that property tax break.
Yeah, you don't want to give into the framing of the idea that taxes are always bad, right? I think that's the issue. Taxes are
absolutely.
Right. And you can fight that framing. I think that's the way to do it. Is try to do things that foster it's not like even doing anything other than getting folks to realize what's already going on. We are a member, we are in the same community. You know what I mean? So if you feel atomized, you're wrong. We are in a community together. We walk, the same streets. We run into one another. Some of us work together. You can't escape the fact that we are a community. And so if you get that, I think it's not as difficult a lift to get people to realize that. And I think that can help. Yeah.
Yes. And also to build on your earlier comment, Heather, about if the people in Hopedale realized, what are the percentages, we're so much of a percentage lower than some other surrounding towns for salaries for police or fire or teachers, but people don't realize that. And when they say, well, we need an override or we need to raise the taxes, that's all they hear. But I don't think people realize, well, I don't even realize myself how much these people make in the other surrounding and comparable communities. But as you said, Heather, if people knew that, maybe they wouldn't be so up in arms about raising taxes and all, Also, if a town meeting, this has bothered me now for a couple of years. I taught in the system here in Hopedale for 18 years. And I remember that way back when, in the beginning, when we all went to town meeting, everything was itemized, everything. This is what we spend on paper. This is what we spend on computer. This is what we spend for whatever, extra courses that the teachers have to take or whatever it is. They don't do that anymore. They come in with, this is the total budget. And I think that if the townspeople knew exactly, right, if they had it explained exactly where that budget figure came from and how it all added up,
More palatable.
yeah, it's more palatable. And I think that more people would understand it and not be as up in arms as they might be when they say, well, we have to raise the taxes or whatever. But if they could see exactly, because it used to be that way, if I'm not mistaken, when I first started teaching in Hopedale, that was in the mid to late 80s. So I think that's all together with what you said, Kaplan, about being transparent, have more transparency, because I think that at town meeting, the residents need to know some of this more detailed information so that they understand. And just building on what you had said previously, Heather, we agree with that.
Yeah, I think another similar thing is the tough choices that they have to make.
Yeah.
Making those.
That's right.
Making those transparent, right? And
Yes.
that is something that we could do. That is not that is not an overpromise. I think that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think
Right.
that's a fair thing to push for. That is not me saying, I know in the future this is all going to be bright. That's something that we could definitely work to get is
Right.
more communication. It is a kind of a value judgment as far as what the word enough means when you talk about.
That's right. It's relative.
Right. And people say, open meetings are enough, right? I've heard that for a long time, right?
Right.
They can be, but I think that you can always do more. And like you said, if it means helping people better understand, and bringing up and doing of a piece with a strategy. So now, what I would do is I would see that as part of that strategy of what I was talking about, where I think about how to build the community, right?
Right.
And I think it's not rocket science to have the strategy and then pursue the strategy and then remain accountable to implement it. You just have to be sort of persistent, like I am.
That's a good thing to be.
Right. And ask questions. And, I've already done that. Folks can see how I've operated already in past meetings on the Hopedale Master Plan Steering Committee and the Planning Board. And I've done similar things where I just ask honest questions about, why hasn't this been implemented? And let's do better next time, and let's just actually implement it. And so I think you're right. I don't think that's overpromising to say we can be even more informative, right?
Sure, thank you. And
Yeah.
also, Kaplan, the master plan committee, is that part of the Envision Hopedale when we filled out
Yes.
that survey? Yes, that is. Okay. Yeah,
Right,
thank
that's
you.
correct. That's correct. So that was a wonderful grassroots effort on behalf of that committee. They had over 400 responses, which is, you know, quite a bit, you know, given it was something that relates to local government. Unfortunately, like that's the other big idea I have. It's kind of like what I was saying before. People have a lot of pessimism about local participation. I really don't. I think, you know, human behavior can be switched. You just have to just be persistent about it. And I think you can get more people to get involved. And you know, so that was just me by way of saying that, you know, that survey that sent out, you know, 400 doesn't sound like a lot, but it did get a good vision, and it did provide a vision, and it did sort of resonate with my own sort of anecdotal evidence that I got from canvassing. And so that was very helpful. Yes. And so that's what they used to sort of craft the vision statement, which was most recently crafted.
Kaplan, question regarding
Yeah.
revenues and expenditures for the town.
Yeah.
What do you see as our biggest problem? And number two, would you be willing to do tax breaks to get businesses into town? Because 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing. So that's my two-part question for you.
Yeah. Now, you know, as far as ideas for revenue, the most obvious one is to try to get more businesses to town, right? And to work toward have a strategic plan for economic development. And that's why I'm going to just circle back to that master plan. And Tony, I don't, you know, it's like, I don't want to say that I can give specific promises that can't come through, because a lot of it has to do with the market. And it sort of does relate to what we're talking about, which is, you know, we have tough times on the horizon potentially as far as revenue goes. So I don't want to overpromise, but I think that, you know, having a strategic plan to think of different ways to bring revenue to town, and capitalizing on the revenue that's already coming with the pot shops, and the fact that the downtown area is changing. The Draper building's coming down. Again, that is a private area, but I want to just keep emphasizing that what we can do, and what I certainly plan to do, is communicate a clear vision for that area. Okay. And as far as the other question about the tax revenue, yeah, I mean, that is something worth considering, because we have the split tax rate right now, okay, which means lower tax rate for residents and higher tax rate for businesses. Now, one of the things you can do is make that a single tax rate, but what that does is it lowers tax rates for businesses and it increases tax rates for residents, right? So you know, that's one thing. If you go to a single rate, that's one of the potential things that happens. But yes, I think, you know, exploring options where we make Hopedale a more attractive place for businesses to come is what we need to do. Some of it does relate, I think, to some of the issues I had as well before about implementation. So, you know, and I'm not pointing fingers here, this is just a way of describing one potential issue is, you know, what is the process from when a business expresses interest to when they can actually start, say, building or moving in, right? And do we need to look at how that happens, and can we think of ways to make that a little easier? Again, I'm not saying that there is an issue there. I'm just saying that's another potential place that you can look at.
And just making it easier. Sorry for the dog. Hold on.
That's okay.
Just making it easier for business to do business within town. I think that's a good point.
Yeah. Thinking of what are, you know, again, it's market. It's a very complex thing, you know, what drives a individual or a company to want to come here, right? and you're relying on, you know, psychology there, right? And you're relying on market, and you're relying on the broader economy. And so there's no, you know, magic bullet. There's no one thing you can do to make it happen. But I do think you can look at like trying to get your own house in order and make sure, or making sure your own house is in order. And I just want to say that what I would do is be that stubborn person who keeps making sure that whatever plans we have are implemented. That's what I can promise you, Tony, is that I would like look at that. And if there was something that we said that needed to get done after we took a hard look at it, I would work to implement it.
And my another statement to that is just that I know there's some issue with the with BVT as far as expenditures are concerned. I'm just going to make a statement that there's in full disclosure, I had one kid graduate from BVT, and I have one that's going now. I'm in favor of my tax dollars going to that school. So I'm just making a statement to you. You wanted to hear from the people of Hopedale. I have two kids that have gone to that school, are going to that school, and I'm very passionate about it too. So it's a good option. I know there's a lot of negativity around it, but there are people in town who enjoy that option.
Thank you for letting me know that. I've heard mixed feelings about it, but a lot of the perspective I've heard has been people are you know, wary of spending their money in that way. So it's nice to hear your perspective. Thank you. Mike, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, I was just going to interject that as far as being receptive to new businesses,
Yeah.
You have to be. You have to be open-minded, and you got to look at the big picture. As far as you're saying, people would come here for what? Okay, we've got to sell it somehow.
Yeah.
You definitely need revenue. We need.
How do we sell?
How do we sell it? I think it's collaboration, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. You have to make it you have to realize it's a desire of someone to come here, and you have to make it attractive
Right.
in one of any number of different ways. And you have to think about what you're doing that could improve that and act
Right.
accordingly.
I mean, someone brought up, you know, TIFs, tax incentives.
Right.
Fine. A lot of towns do that, but
Right.
a lot of towns get in trouble by going too far with tax incentives, and then
Right.
end up hurting the local homeowners.
Right. Yeah. I mean, those make sense if it's being first of all, if it's short term,
Sure.
right? And it's being counterbalanced by things like jobs and people coming here and sales tax and local sales tax and things like that, right? So it doesn't always make sense.
No.
Not all those agreements are worthwhile, and so you have to look at it on a case by case basis. It's very complicated.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Kaplan, do you know that I don't know the answer to this, but in trying to attract businesses to the Draper area, does that all have to go through Mr. Schwachman, or do the selectmen have any say and input in that? I mean, it's great to go after the businesses, but who's going to do that?
Well, can I interject something before you answer that, Kaplan?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. You mentioned like Milford Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
And I don't know what we've been doing since I've retired from being a selectman, but we used to have a good rapport with them.
Yeah.
That's one of the places you can start with.
Sure. And I actually have a good relationship with them through Millis, believe it or not.
Sure.
So I have a history with them. So yeah, and as far as Nancy, your question, it's a partnership. We have to, if Mr. Schwachman has an idea, we have to be okay with it as a town. Right? It's not going to be something where he can he has an idea of what he wants, right? And my strategy there is, again, it's just about communicating a very clear vision for him about what is good for the town. And that's what we
put forth ideas. Has he put forth ideas that you know of, or not yet?
Well, he did have a group present at the latest master plan steering committee,
Mhm.
right? And he's spoken in somewhat specific terms about what he wants. Again, I appreciate the fact that he shows up to the master plan steering committee meetings
Right.
and he participates.
Mhm.
You know that because it's a business, it's got to make economic sense for him to do something there. And
sure, yeah.
and there are things that might be safe investments for him, which might not be what we want as a town. For example, things that add to town services, for example. Now add too much to town services, but that is another calculation you have to make, right? So you have to say, is there some sort of benefit that certain kind of development would have long term, where if it was adding any services to the town, it would be offset by revenue, right? You can ask those kinds of questions, but we might have to compromise.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's
You might
the
have to
word.
compromise,
Well,
and
that's,
he might have to compromise,
Yeah,
and you have to come to an agreement because ultimately it is a private, property there.
yeah, that's it. And that's what I think has been holding it up
Right.
for so many years, at least 35 years.
Yeah, I mean, but
That's what's hard, that,
yeah. It's coming down. It's the Hopedale is changing.
Mm,
yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
it is.
Hopedale's changing. It's coming down, and I want to again just say that he's been collaborative, being on the master plan steering committee. He has communicated his general understanding of what he's going to do in it. It's not anything that one wouldn't expect from someone who is trying to think of things from a business standpoint.
Mhm.
And so as far as I want to work with him, and if I was elected on the board of selectmen, I would work with him. By the way, if I was elected to the select board, I would remain on the master plan steering committee. Okay, and so
That's good.
I
Yeah.
would remain there. I would not remain on the planning board, but I would remain on the master plan steering committee because I think it's an important thing to do what I said, which is communicate a very clear vision for that area.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And if I could just make a comment, Tony, it's wonderful that you have children who are at BVT or of kids who have graduated from there and they've done really well. But I think at the town meeting, I got the idea that Dr. Fitzpatrick came in with a big, huge amount of money. And I think that people, including myself, felt a little upset because, if the Hopedale Public Schools need money, and a huge chunk is going to BVT, it almost doesn't quite jive as far as I'm concerned. I can't reconcile that. But on the other hand, if they also would itemize and let the residents of Hopedale know, this is why Dr. Fitzpatrick is asking for this huge amount of money, because it's so much for A, so much for B, so much for C, and categorize everything so that people would understand it and become more transparent, in giving us that information. It might serve the BVT cause better. That's all.
And if we don't know, if we don't know that information, we should know it. Yeah, I mean,
That's right.
we
Yeah,
should know it.
we should.
Yeah,
And I think that's what some of the people at the town meeting in October were trying to say,
Mhm.
just handing over this huge chunk of money
All right.
was upsetting to a number of people. So that's something to think about.
Let's fix that, because it's a open form of government, which requires if you're going to be at town meeting making a decision, it needs to be an informed decision.
Right.
It doesn't.
And that's a good point, Kaplan. I just want to we've got to do the analysis, because if you take those kids, those 60 kids or whatever kids back into the Hopedale school systems, how many more teachers is it? How much more building is it going to be? You've got to do the analysis to see what the actual cost, so you can make it apples to apples, because
That's true.
it's
Yeah.
not apples to apples the way it runs right now, because the teacher's pension is within the town, their benefits are within the town. So you've got to level set that and see what that number is. And I think that's a
Right.
fair way to look at that. And you'd have to rework that contract based on, and I don't think we're the only town that's complaining about the increases in BVT, and I have my own concerns about it too. I'm just saying, I think it's a great school. My
Well,
kids have,
It is. It is.
two of my
Wonderful
kids have
school.
gone there. And I don't mind that my tax dollars go there. I don't think as a town we understand what the finances are behind it, and we've got to level set that. And
That's
that's
it,
something
yeah.
that maybe you want to take on, Kaplan, when you become.
Yeah,
a
well,
public
and
selectman.
I just want to add to that. Look, I mean, you're sort of making a different point just by saying what you're saying, where you're communicating how you feel and you're giving a very concrete experience with your kids. We
Yeah.
tend to look at things solely in terms of economic terms, and I'm not a, I'm a realist about economics, right? But it also helps to, as far as like transparency goes, Nancy, right? Maybe Tony making his story transparent.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
What that school has meant to him. And this
Yeah.
is a member of your community, a person. We have a hard time sort of, getting back on a personal level with one another these days, as we all sit here on squares that shuffle around.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
right.
I think, Tony, right? Do you see what I'm trying to say? I think part of it can be you just making clear in very real terms and you say it to somebody's face, or you say it on camera here tonight, that now it airs on local TV, what that school means to you. Then it's not just about a number on a line item on a budget. Tony, does that make sense?
That makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
It really does. And, I'll tell you this, that my daughter graduated there. She'll be a sophomore this year. She's been on the dean's list every semester that she's been in college. So is it worth the investment? I think so. So.
All right. That's great to know. Like I said, see, you spoke something to me, and I heard it, and I understand the dollars and cents part of it, but there's other things, there's other ways of measuring value that matter as well as dollars and cents.
Right. Does
matter.
it need to be reworked? I think that there's an outcry from other towns too, that that contract is 45 years old and probably needs to be polished off again. I mean, a 45-year-old contract is an old contract. Let's just put it
There's
that way.
no doubt.
Okay, so we have a question there, a raised hand.
Yeah, it's Tara Chambers. I just wanted
hey,
to
Tara.
make I just wanted to make two comments. I'm with Tony on BVT, but I think the problem is, yes, the money is in question, but people pit it against us and them.
Right.
That BVT is our school also, and it started out for vocational school. They seem to gear now more towards college prep, which is taking away from the kids who want a vocation. That's what needs to be looked at.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
But when people say, why should we give them the money? It is us also.
Yeah.
It's not us, them. And Nancy, just so you know, if I'm not mistaken, the details of the school budget are on the school website.
I
It's
see.
very,
Okay.
very complicated, and it's very
Yeah.
large. It's hundreds of pages, but
Right.
it is all in detail there.
Yeah,
Right, but we need-
okay.
we
Thank
need
you.
that.
Thanks, Tara.
But we need that digestible and explained.
Yeah, the Reader's Digest version.
Well, I mean, seriously,
Yeah,
you
it used to be the
summarize.
Reader's Digest version at town meeting that went out, yeah.
So yeah, Tara, was that your question, or was just a comment?
I was just commenting on both
Okay,
things, because I, like I said, I agree with Tony, and I just wanted to say that, you can go look at it. Yes,
Yeah,
I can
right.
see wanting it to be able to at town meeting, but it is there. It is
It
made
is
public.
there. Thank you. But I think that if it were to be made a little more public at town meeting, all the people who attend town meeting would see it, rather than.
Except that everybody complains about town meeting being so long, and they
Sure.
don't want to, take votes, ballot votes and all this, because everyone will be there. If they had to digest hundreds and hundreds of pages at town meeting, no one would
Well,
go.
it did used to be hundreds of pages. Like I
Well,
say, it was
yeah.
the Reader's Digest
Right,
version.
and you
but we
can
did
do
that. Yeah.
you can do outreach efforts prior to town meeting. I know that they do preparatory meetings, and we were talking about that before, Tara. What this comes down to is a value judgment about the word enough. you know, do we do enough by way of sharing information? One person might say that because it's available on the school website, that's enough, or because people, these are all in open meetings, right, that are broadcast on local TV, that is enough. But another person might have a different definition of the word enough. And I think that, you know, if we can speak towards addressing a problem by going over and above what is already done, right, to make it more transparent so that it helps people better understand one another and come to an agreement about why these hard decisions are being made, right? And you have, I mean, I think that's, to me, a no-brainer that would be one thing that we could do is work hard. And that is my history with, you know, my work with grassroots organizing was built around doing just that. Okay. And that's where I come from. I think that, you know, it's about harnessing the power of town meeting. I love town meeting. I think it's the coolest thing. This idea of direct democracy. It's inspiring and like, it's just a one of a kind thing. And I think it has huge potential and huge power. And I would love the chance to, you know, be on the board and work with the people of Hopedale in a partnership to like harness that power. And I believe that I can, because the things that we're talking about, what you have to do, they're not rocket science.
Not at all.
They're not. It's not rocket science.
Well, I tell you what, I appreciate you stepping up and being the guy that's going to tell the truth and not have an agenda. You don't go into this with an agenda. You go into to help the town, period. And you've proven that with your stepping up for all your help right now.
Thanks,
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We admire your tenacity. That's great. You say,
Right.
you're obstinate, but that, no.
Stubbornness.
Say tenacity instead. We
I'm
admire
serious.
that.
You just don't go away. I don't, again, it's not.
That's all. That's
Well,
right.
as I say, you don't walk away.
No. I mean, yeah, it's not that hard. I'm here and I'll be here.
Good.
Yeah.
Great.
Jimmy, is your camera a reason to assume that you have a question, or are you just being personable?
I am being personable, plus the little guy is out for the night, so.
Good.
Jimmy, it's nice I haven't met you in person, so.
Yes, we have not met in person.
I am glad that you are stepping up. That was really cool. And how do you pronounce your is it your wife?
Yeah, her first name is Saken and last name is Kokar.
She's great. She was awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, we're.
Why, thank you.
Hey, Saken,
There she is.
you're awesome. Thank you.
So she, the last part of the night is always the little guy has to see her. So my job was kind of help out with the bath and give him the bottle, and then that's it. So as soon as that was done, I was able to turn the camera on. So thank you for that.
I know all about that.
Yeah, I am excited for this opportunity. And again, you know, basically our main goal is we want to help. We love this town. It's an amazing, it's an amazing town. The community, you know, we're nice and small. You know, that's the best thing about it. Some of the bigger towns, you kind of get lost in translation and a lot of other things. But here, you know, we have an opportunity to just kind of help each other and help the town grow as much as possible. So I'm excited for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to getting some great votes and being on the board.
Yeah, thank you so much for stepping up on the planning board. So you're running as a write-in candidate for the planning board. Do you want to say your address so folks know what to write in? Do you want to say that here, or do you want to share that somewhere else?
So I did put a post on the Hopedale, and I am going to do it again.
Okay.
I don't know how many people have pen and paper handy, but I'm happy to. That's not a problem. But I am going to, in a couple days before the vote, I'm going to bump the post again, so my address is on there again.
Great. So folks can look to the Hopedale Bulletin Board for that information to get you a write-in as a write-in for the 1-year planning board position. Because I'm on the 5-year. You're not running against me, right? I'm on that 5-year.
Divulge that now.
Well, I'm going in for the
I'll help you
one.
make sure that those get seen, by the way, because I'm one of the admins
There you
on
go.
the board.
There you
Yeah,
go.
Say that
I'll
again,
go
I'm sorry.
look for it.
Heather's one of the admins of the bulletin board, so she'll make sure that your information gets seen.
It's bumped up.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay,
my
great,
concern,
awesome.
too.
Thanks so much, Heather. That's
Yeah,
great.
no, that's great. And I was gonna say, I am running for 1 year with the hope of just getting the 5-year. Getting enough votes for that.
No,
So,
yeah, yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah.
You know,
Likewise.
it's sort of funny because if I do, I want to win the board of selectmen or the select board. So you know, that means
Yeah.
I'm wanting something where I won't get to work with you, which is unfortunate.
Okay.
I think
But,
it's wonderful to see
yeah.
all of you younger people, you know, getting involved, really and truly involved in the town and wanting
Right.
to help. I think it's wonderful. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you.
And there's more folks out there. I know it.
Yeah.
It's a numbers game. It's a numbers game.
Right.
Mhm.
There's somebody watching this on local television who could serve on the capital planning committee, for example, where you know, are you a numbers person? Where you can, you know, strategize how to spend our money? Are you concerned about that? You know, there's the personnel committee. There's economic development. And I heard there's a write-in candidate for housing authority, which is great. So we need people to fill these spots and to, you know, bring about a positive change in Hopedale and help people, you know, step up and make it happen. And like you said, get more good people like Jimmy and Seken. And I'm
You?
encouraged. I'm very much encouraged by that. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I just want to say, like, you know, obviously the change element, but just being able to get the participation, because there's a lot of people with great ideas and what they want to do, what they want their town to be. It's just kind of, you know, being able to get them to vocalize. That is a huge aspect, you know, just the big turnout is what we really need in this town. And again, we're such a small community. And you know, that should be very easy to do, but unfortunately it's not the case. But we're hoping that change is coming.
No, it will if you work at it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
It will if you work
That's
at
right.
it. So it's nice to know that you're on board.
Absolutely. So is our kitty.
We want to introduce all our
There
family
you go. Well,
members.
it's not a Zoom meeting without a kitty cameo.
Yes,
dog.
absolutely.
Usually they walk in front of the camera, you know.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
He loves being on my shoulder, so he's like, oh, this is great. I'm on the phone and I can just hop on and I'm not gonna move or I'm not gonna do anything. So,
This
Yeah.
reality space we're getting, because I'm not that lucky on my work calls. My colleagues have seen all parts of it.
yeah.
All right. Well, are there any other questions? I think this was great, and I think that I don't know if we can top the kitty cameo. So I don't know if we need to.
Well, thank you for holding this session, because it
Yeah,
really
thank you.
helps. It helps us to get to know you, get to know, you know, what your stance is on a lot of the issues. So thank you for doing it.
Yeah, thank you
Absolutely.
very much.
Yeah,
That's
thanks
great.
for coming.
Thank
And the election's coming up May 11th, 12 to 7, the Draper Gym. And I'm asking for your vote, and I appreciate you all participating. And let's Hopedale's changing. Hopedale's changing, and we'll get some people like Jimmy to step up, and we'll remain transparent. Again, I don't think that's heaven and earth. I don't. We can become more transparent. All right. And then we can have a strategic plan, a vision for Hopedale that we are very articulate about what that is. And then we can just be stubborn. I'll put it that way, Nancy, about how we implement it. You're persistent about how you implement it, and you make it happen, And then, you know, the only other thing I'd want to say is, you know, I feel like there's a lot of division in town right now, and people forget that we are a member of the same community,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
That's right.
and it's just like we are, you know, going to interact with one another, and in a certain sense, we share the same fate.
Yeah.
And your success is my success, and vice versa. And I think there are some, you know, I've said this before. I think there are some difficult times ahead, potentially. And the only way you get through those is by coming together as a community. And then you hear, things like Tony telling, what BVT meant to him. And you hear
Right.
that. You hear it from a person. It's again, I think it's very simple what we have to do. Making it happen takes persistence, but all it is just realizing that we're all people. I know that sounds kind of, odd to say as if that's revolutionary, but that's my feeling. If we just learn how to fall back and treat each other as people, I think that can be a very important way to go forward, and realize it's okay to disagree too. Not only is it okay to disagree, this is the last thing I'll say, because this gets me very excited. I want people that are intelligent, sincere, and well-meaning who disagree with me. I want those people, because that's how I learn. So not only do I think it's okay to disagree, if I have an intelligent, sincere, well-meaning person, I want to hear their opposing side. And I think that if you just remember that you're people, it's okay. And I feel like that's something else we need to think of as a bigger problem here. We've all forgotten how to disagree.
That's why I agree with you, Kaplan. That's why I got married.
Oh, that's good.
Is your wife there?
Yeah.
She sure is. Yeah.
Okay, Michael.
She's nodding her head.
I love it. That's a great comment. I feel like we should end with that. So
That's great.
Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you all coming.
You're welcome.
You're
And,
welcome.
Yeah, thank
again,
you.
May 11th, I'm asking for your vote.
You
Right.
got it.
All right, take care.
All right, thanks so much.
Good night
You
now.
got it, Kaplan. Thank you.
All right.
Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.